What's up, Mando fans? On today's show, we are digging deeper into Season 3, Episode 4 of The Mandalorian. We've got a major cameo to talk about and some deeper questions that we need to address. Welcome to the Story Geek Show, officially part of the Orange Grove 55 network. Let's dig deeper into Episode 4. So we don't have Dr. Dre with us in the house today. He's taking care of some other stuff. But we do have OG55, Orange Grove. Tell the people about yourself and where they can find you.
You can find me right here on Orange Grove 55, where we talk everything theme park. We mostly Disneyland Resort, but we also dip into Walt Disney World with George and his show, the Citrus Corner Show. We obviously have Dr. Dre with his Freshly Squeezed show. And we also have a lot of stuff that's not park related, like this show right here, the Story Geeks with Jay Sherer, as well as my own Orange Nerd show. And so check us out. Hit that subscribe button. And you can also find me on Twitter at Orange Grove 55. And I got a little something to get us going.
Perfect. I love it. Definitely follow OG on Twitter. Do that for sure. And check out the last Orange Nerd show that we did. Was really fun. I got to join OG and Dre and talk a little bit more about the recent happenings at Marvel, about some of their shifting landscape. And we also talked a little bit about Lucasfilm and what's going on over there as well. There's a lot going on over there. But I also want to introduce our guest this week. Reina Creole has been just able to join us, and we could not be happier. So thank you so much, Reina. Where can people find you? What are you up to on your channel?
Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for bringing me back on Orange Grove 55 channel. This is awesome. So I'm so thankful for the invite. You can find me on Twitter spouting all kinds of opinions about pop culture, television, film, and probably usually disrespectful food as well. So you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram posting pictures and all kinds of things. And of course, you can find me on YouTube, my channel, where I opine about pop culture, theme parks, especially the Florida theme parks. That is where I live now in the state of Florida. So that's pretty much what I do. Love watching movies, love watching TV, and love it when Disney is involved in that.
And make sure you subscribe to her on YouTube. Check her out on YouTube. She is phenomenal. I love Lorena's content.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Definitely do that. And she was just telling us that she just got off another show talking about The Mandalorian. So you are ready to go, Lorena.
I am ready, locked and loaded and ready to go. But
that's awesome. That's fantastic. Now, if you're in the chat, and I'm going to say this several times, I'll keep repeating myself here, but if you're in the chat and you want us to address something that you saw in this show, that you have something that you want to throw out there for us to talk a little bit more about and interact around, go ahead and put those things down in the chat below. We're going to work through. We've got 4 questions this week. As usual, we're trying to dig deeper into this content if we can. So by the time we get through these 4 questions, we'll be addressing your questions or comments after that. We'll also show some of those comments as we talk, and may even address them midstream if it makes sense. So definitely get involved with the show. Well, since I only have 2 people here with me today, which one of you wants to start off answering the first question? Should we let Lorena answer the first question?
Yes. Ladies first. Lorena first.
Oh, thank you.
Perfect. And I do want to say too, there is a spoiler warning because we are definitely going to spoil this show. So if you haven't already seen it, you might want to jump and come back later. But let's start with just our general opinions about this show. Scale of 1 to 10, Lorena. What did you like? What did you not like? Why? Take it away.
Okay, so are we saying with respect to this episode, with respect to this season, or
respect to this episode? Just this
episode.
Yeah.
Okay, I just have to recenter.
Yeah.
Overall, the episode, there were things I liked. There were things that I did not like. Number one, let me say the directing, of course, was awesome. Carl Weathers, I love his directing style. So I did indeed Did indeed like that. Love the flashback to Order 66, which it seems like we're having so many younglings actually escape that, which we're finding out in The Mandalorian. That particular scene had the urgency and the excitement that I wish I would have seen when we saw a little Rodan winged creature come out and pick off one of the Mandalorian kids. There was a sense of urgency missing there that I would have liked to have seen, especially with the way the Mandalorian are jumping into action. That was kind of missing. Like, all right, let's go home, shower, sleep on it. Then we'll go back.
I know that was weird.
Go back and get the kid. So overall, it was okay. Again, some things I liked, some things I didn't like. Definitely better than last week's episode for sure. So if you asked me on a scale from 1 to 10 what I would give this episode, unfortunately, I would give it about a 5, and we'll find out more as you guys ask me questions.
Nice. Now, really quickly, because OG and I have been talking about every single episode thus far. So if you were to give us like a scale of 1 to 10 on the season as a whole, are you kind of more positive about this season, a little more negative about this season? How do you feel overall with the season?
I'm a bit more negative about the season. Now, when the season started, they learned the lessons, I felt, from what they did in season 2. In season 2, I didn't feel that the opener felt like a season opener. Usually a season opener starts out with a bang, like, holy crap, there's all this stuff going on. And it basically sets up the motivation for what you're going to see through the season. What is the mystery that's going to be solved? What is the conflict that is going to be solved? You usually can see what's being set up. So it's like, oh, man, I can't wait to come back next week and see, and see what's going on. They didn't do that in season 2, but in season 3, that season opener, I thoroughly enjoyed the season opener. Episode 2, I liked, although I just kind of wish there was a bit more action in it, but I did like those 2. End of episode 2, I was like, yes. Season opener, I'll give it an 8. Episode 2, I'll give it a 7.5, but I can't wait to see what's going to happen. And then episode 3 happened, and I'm just like, okay, didn't we have this issue in season 2 where things were slow, super slow? And then I think with like 3 episodes left, they hit the gas and, and kind of pulled it out. So unfortunately, I'm starting to see that trend happen again. I really hope that the next episode coming up puts the pedal to the metal again, but I'm kind of skeptical seeing what I saw for a season from season 2. So I am hoping for the best, but prepared for it to not be not be the best. So I'm hopeful. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful, but it's like watching,
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, we talked about a lot of those things too, because I think OG, you've been pretty positive about this season.
Yeah,
Dre and I have been a little bit more, we're still kind of not sure. So what did you think of episode 4 here, OG? What would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10? Would you like, would you not like, and why?
Okay, so actually this episode got a little lower for me than my usual. Like the other episodes, I was kind of rocking the 7s and the 8s, I'm going 6.5 on this one. I'm going 6.5 on this one because number one, it was just way too short. It was like once you factor in the credits, it was like 25 minutes or something. It went by way too quick, I mean, they might as well have just like tacked this on to the last episode and given the last episode like an hour and a half or something, a little weird. One thing that I did like about it though, quite a bit actually, is how they're kind of bringing Grogu into his own, right? He's no longer this little like baby that like needs to be protected. He's sort of becoming his own guy, right? Where he's training and they're giving him more responsibility, sort of, right? I like that, and I think that was needed. I think the whole like like father-son thing with him and Din can get kind of old if they don't evolve. And I think that this evolution they're going through right now with Grogu, where he's, doing the training and he's becoming more independent, where he's, they're setting him up. I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great move. I really like in this episode and really the whole season so far, what they're doing with like these creatures. These massive creatures, those fight scenes with the really awesome stuff, very Game of Thronesy, right? With the dragons and all that. Loving that. I think that works really well with Star Wars. I like the Bo-Katan stuff and that she's kind of taking charge now. She's kind of head of the pack, showing that leadership, What I didn't like about it, I got to agree with Lorena. I just feel it's a little bit more of the same. It doesn't feel like, in terms of like just the Grogu stuff is fantastic, but I just feel like we're not moving along fast enough. I think they could do more to sort of push the story along. And I am a little worried that we're going to get to like the last 2 episodes and it's all going to be crammed into the last 2, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I can see where Lorena's coming on that. And I definitely would agree on that. I think that they definitely need to step it up a little bit. So overall, it was okay. 6.5, just too short. They gotta pick up the pace a little bit, but there was quite a few cool things in here that I did enjoy quite a bit. So
yeah, that makes sense. I think what's funny is I have been consistently one of the lowest, like on our scale of 1 to 10s every week, and I've been around like the anywhere from 6 to kind of like 7. This is actually my highest rated episode of this season yet.
What?
Now it's only a 7.5, so I'm not getting into like this is amazing territory. Like it's a 7.5. But let me explain why I'm kind of sitting where I'm sitting, because I agree with everything you said, and this actually for me was the most narratively consistent episode that I think we've seen. The thing I've been complaining about is the story structures of all the other episodes have been kind of disjointed. It feels like it doesn't feel like they're weaving storylines together. It feels like they're giving us like this and now we better tack some Bo and Din on the end of this one and the beginning of this one, because otherwise it'll be too boring. So we'll tack it on. This one at least was narratively consistent. Like, we have a problem we have to solve. We get to see a little bit of backstory as we solve that problem. It's all wrapped up around the foundling idea and what's going on there. So at least I kind of go, okay, you're narratively consistent in this one where you were inconsistent in some of the previous ones. I also loved the flashback scene that you guys both talked about.
Yeah,
thought it was fantastic. Now, I do find that the Grogu puppet, which is, by the way, one of the best puppets that has ever been produced, right? Like, it's phenomenal. But he is, but it also is a little awkward to make him go Attack of the Clones Yoda, right? Like when he's like flying through the air, it's not. So let me explain what I would have liked to have seen. I said this on Twitter earlier. The kid goes to shoot him, and he just force pushes the darts away and then shoots the kid in the chest. Like, that would have been a lot more, I don't know, it would have been more consistent with what I feel like Grogu is capable of. The whole flipping around him, I thought was, it's a little, I didn't hate it, but it's not my favorite. I will say this, though. Never in my life would I have thought that we would get to see a character, and I would not have thought it would have been Grogu either, to be honest with you, that trained as a Jedi and is now training as a Mandalorian. Yeah. And that concept is amazing. So I love that part of it. I also love the now, Lorena, I don't know, did you ever play Knights of the Old Republic or the sequel to Knights of the Old Republic?
I did not. I've heard that game is flipping amazing, but no, I have never played it.
It's awesome. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And I'm not even like a huge gamer, but I love that game. The whole fight scenes in the Mandalorian camp, those are like straight out of that game. Like you would walk around the game and like see Mandalorians fighting each other like in their camps. Like so I love that kind of like a little bit of a throwback. The one shot of Bo flying her ship chasing the dragon, I thought was phenomenal. It just harkened back to, I think it was a Force Awakens with the TIE fighters, right? Was that Force Awakens or was that The Last Jedi? the TIE fighters flying into the suns.
Oh, I think Force Awakens, I believe.
I think it was Force Awakens. Yeah. I also have to say that I thought it was just a couple more things and we'll move on. But I thought it was really funny because most people may not have thought this was a callback. I laughed a lot about it. Is the Paz Vizsla running out of his jetpack fuel? To me, felt like he almost went full Porkins, and it made me laugh.
That's funny.
I just got Porkins vibes. And I thought,
funny.
How perfect is it for Jon Favreau to put himself in the show and then go full Porkins?
That's fantastic. You know, one thing I really do want to compliment this show on, though, is how they're handling Coruscant. That was actually one of my criticisms with Andor. It just didn't feel right in that show, a little too dystopian in that show. This one, I feel like they're really hitting it to like the Coruscant that we knew in the prequels. I think it's much more consistent with that, and I think it's been fantastic. Really beautiful. And
I would have to agree with you, because Coruscant is literally the center of everything. It's like anything and everything, you know, is there, and there's this energy to it, like the promise that's there. That's kind of like how I see it. And like you're saying, Orange Grove, how we've seen it in the prequels, it's something that's very vibrant. It's not like you were saying, like this dystopian vision. You have your dystopians that are there, but you also have the serious optimists are there, even from the guy selling, you know, the death sticks and it's the underbelly of course I would like to see more of, but that's just me.
Yeah, which is also a coder thing, by the way. You do go into the underbelly of Coruscant in Knights of the Old Republic. So just another thing that's cool about that. Just three other things that I want to agree with Lorena. I felt the same way about them not having any urgency about the kid. It's like, well, wait, like, you guys want to sleep first? Like, let's just take a nap. Like, we'll go get the kid later. Like, that was so bizarre. That was a little weird for me. And I think that, so I do agree with you, OG, that the Tatooine vibes are really cool. However, I also loved the Western vibes that we were getting, especially in the Book of Boba Fett, when they pulled in Timothy Oliphant's character. I can't remember what his name is. They pulled. Do you guys remember what it was?
The Marshal.
I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, the Marshal, whatever it is.
I believe.
Maybe it's just the Marshal. Yeah, maybe so. But they had him. They had Cad Bane.
I'm gonna look it up.
But they had him, they had Cad Bane. There was like this Western elements that we saw from Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, I think, as well. And I am missing that a little bit. And I am thinking that the Monster of the Week would be kind of cool if it was a Monster of the Week kind of show. But shoving a new monster in just to give conflict so that they can do other things is. So I know I agree with you, OG. It's kind of cool, but like it's not really. I think that's what's getting in the way of what Lorena is talking about with like the putting our foot on the gas, right? Like It's like we're still doing these other things to kind of showcase. And so that, I don't know, it doesn't sit perfect with me. So I think that this episode was my favorite of the season, but that's mostly because of the narrative consistencies without this weird editing. So
yeah, I can see that. Like the creatures and the fight scenes with those creatures are really dope, but in a way it does feel like it's like a tangent, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, kind of like a filler. Oh, by the way, Timothy Oliphant's character is Cobb Vanth. I freaking love
there it is.
Cobb Vanth. He's amazing.
He's fantastic.
Yeah. He's so good. Yeah, and I don't know why. If you ever watched Timothy Oliphant get interviewed, you would never think that he would be the perfect Western dude. Like but he's played Western roles. He played Justified.
Yeah, Justified.
He was in the HBO show. It's the name of the town. I can't remember the name of it, but with Al Swearingen, and he was the sheriff of that town. So he's amazing in that role. But he's kind of feels like a hippie when you see him interviewed, like in like his real life. So it makes me laugh. But he's amazing.
He's great.
So we've got some great comments in the chat, and just a reminder, we are going to get to those comments. We'll just circle back around to them after we go through these questions. So OG, I'm going to start with you this time on this question. This is our question number 2. Let's talk about this Ahmed Best sequence. It's interesting for several reasons. And I want to get your thoughts on them. So one, how did Grogu escape Anakin? Because we know Anakin, he killed a lot of younglings, but he didn't get Grogu. So how did he escape Anakin? And why is he seem to be getting extra protection as compared to the other younglings in the Jedi Temple? And two, Kelleran, which is Ahmed Best's character, Kelleran takes Grogu to a Naboo entourage, and they escape in a Naboo cruiser. So what does that suggest about Grogu's backstory that we may or may not see in the coming episodes? So big question, but what do you think, OG? What are some of the implications of this?
Okay, first of all, I just want to say it was really great to have Ahmed Best back. I think that was a phenomenal decision. Hey, look, he really went through it, being Jar Jar in the prequels, and it was really good to see him come back and have a really badass role. So that was awesome. I really like that decision. So for question number one, how did Grogu escape Anakin? It's interesting. My only guess would be he hid in his little pod thing, right? Maybe he just shut the little door and he just hung out for a little while. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I could really imagine him doing to get away from that. Now you're right, Jay. It did seem like he had a lot more extra protection. That was interesting. I don't know if it was if that was just for like a storytelling device where it was like, okay, well, we're focusing on him escaping because it's the focus of this show, or if there was actually like an in-universe reason why they're focusing on Grogu. I'm still kind of mixed on that. So I'm not really sure. But it did seem like they were really kind of zeroing in on him. I just don't know if it's an in-universe reason or if it's just like, well, he's a star of the show, so we're going to focus on this character, you know? Right. Now, what I did find interesting too with this whole thing is that it seemed okay. So Kelleran takes Grogu, and they escape, and they he takes him to the Naboo entourage or what have you, right? I do say that part made me feel like he was more special. Like that's why I'm mixed about it. Like that made me feel like there was something to Grogu that he was trying to protect. Like maybe they know he's like really powerful in the Force. Maybe his midichlorians are through the roof. Who knows? And that's why they were sort of singling him out. So I'm kind of torn on it. I think there's a lot of stuff in this scene that's showing like, yeah, they're singling him out. He's very powerful. They have to protect this child. They take him to the Naboo entourage, what have you. But at the same time, I also feel like maybe it's just a storytelling device for the episode, and it's focusing on Grogu because he's the main character of this particular show. So that's why zeroing in on him. I'm kind of mixed on it, but overall, I really love the scene. It gave major prequel vibes. It look, if I didn't know any better and I would just watch this scene, I would say this is straight from the prequels. I mean, the way everything looked, Ahmed Best with his two lightsabers. I mean, how more prequel-y can you get than that? Right, it's so prequel-y. He was badass in it too. The way he was like deflecting the blaster bolts and stuff. I love that. Very, very cool scene. But yeah, it's a tough question. I don't know. I don't really know. It's hard because it's like I'm torn on it. I don't know if like they were protecting him in universe or if they were just showing him more because it was part of the show and he's the main star of the show. So
yeah, and I do think there was a cool shot in there too when they're leaving the Jedi Temple and it's on fire. That was crazy. You're like, oh, they really went after that temple. All right, Lorena, what do you think? This is a big question. We've got Grogu escaping Anakin. He seems to have extra protection, but do you think that's true? And then what happens with this? What are we going to see happen with this Naboo entourage? Where are they taking Grogu? Where's he going?
I kind of had an interesting reaction when watching this. First of all, very cool to see Ahmed Best. I had zero problem with him as Jar Jar, so I'm kind of just like, what's the problem? Like, I mean, I really didn't have a problem with him at all. I kind of liked the outlook that he had in the prequels, especially when you saw kind of like he was kind of naive and wanting to help everyone in the first one, and then he's doing more senatorial, thing. Just seeing him grow. So I honestly didn't know who it was in the beginning until somebody said, "Oh, that's Ahmad Best." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. Glad to see that he's on screen." And again, badass with the blue and the green saber going at it. But I kind of had a flashback to Revenge of the Sith. Because my issue is reason that hit so hard when you see, the Jedi Temple getting attacked, when you see Anakin walk in and the younglings are just basically, "Master Anakin, what do we do?" And you see his face and, you see Bail Organa trying to go to the Jedi Temple and they're shooting and he's like, "I don't know what the heck's going on." And this one lone Jedi apprentice, this lone Padawan comes out. Basically, his mission is just to save Bail Organa. And if it wasn't for him, Bail Organa wouldn't have gotten away. And then the later scene, we see Yoda and we see, Obi-Wan just looking at the devastation of what happened in the Jedi Temple and leaving a message to warn everyone to stay away. Now, what I took from that is that none of those younglings survived Order 66. And to see Yoda be one that was saved, to see, Reva and Obi-Wan, like somehow they got preserved. To me, it took away from the emotional gut punch of that moment to show just how far Anakin had fallen. So that aside, Yoda is Baby Yoda Grogu. He is treated like he is special. He's got this special pram. Why isn't he waddling out with everyone else? And they're trying to figure out what's going on. As for special, I would think that because he is the de facto part of the show, from a merchandising standpoint, he is the star of the show. Face it. I mean, they sell it with the prams. They've even got a little dog bed that looks like Grogu's pram. I mean, they do that. So I think that's why they kind of went with that, to kind of show him as being special. So I don't know if it was just special for the sake of who he is in the story, or special in that, hey, we got to get that merch, so we have to, to show Grogu as special. As for the Naboo contingent, that part didn't really make that much sense to me. I'm like, Naboo of all people. Now, Alderaan, to me, that would kind of make a bit more strategic sense, especially given how Bail Organa is a senator in the Imperial Senate. So with the kind of connections that he has, especially since he's, low-key funding the resistance, to me, that would make sense to take him and go away. With Naboo, I'm kind of like, what kind of connection is there? It just didn't seem to make as much sense to me, since we saw Bail Organa leaving in Revenge of the Sith. And it would have been really good if they would have made that connection, because even if it was a transport undercover from Alderaan, we know Bail Organa was at the Jedi Temple when all of that went down. So that's kind of how I see it. The scene was cool, much more action than, the kid getting taken by a pterodactyl. I mean, I would have liked it if the kid would have gotten, if the croc would have got him, like that actually would have been pretty cool, or if he got one for a pet or something like that. But yeah, I did like how that was done. Just again, the running up against what we've seen in Revenge of the Sith, and just kind of like a misstep with going to Naboo. I think it should have been someone from Alderaan instead.
Interesting thing about this character, Kelleron. He was actually, do you guys remember that Jedi challenge show on the Star Wars YouTube for Kids?
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was it was like a game show for kids, and he was like the Jedi trainer to all these kids, right? Like a Jedi training academy, which is interesting that that was in, I believe, 2020, and then that same character is being shown in this scene as a basically in the same role. He's training these little Padawans. So I thought that was kind of a cool little thing that they did there. I don't know, it's kind of neat. I never watched the show, but it was interesting nonetheless that they went that route with it,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool. So I want to pick up on a couple of things you guys said, because I had a similar feelings about them. First of all, seeing Ahmed Best again, awesome. I unlike you, Lorena, I did not like Jar Jar in context. I understand why George put Jar Jar in there. I get it. Just not my jam. I love Andor. There's nothing like, there's not a lot of kid stuff in Andor. I love Andor, and the Jar Jar is like pure kid stuff, right? Like he's like, that's just what he is. He's meant for that, and that's fine. But I don't have any issues with Ahmed Best, and I love seeing him come back like this. The people who complained about him and made him the target of Jar Jar is completely ridiculous. So seeing him get to do this is amazing. And I'm in full support of it.
That is really interesting about Ahmed Best, because from what I remember at that point in time, it seemed more the press, anything else, coming after him and clowning his appearance and and all of that. I know from the fans that I know, or the ones that I've seen, it's kind of like, either you kind of like it or you didn't. And if you didn't, it was like, can't like everything. And it was kind of like the end of it. But I do know on social media, I find it kind of disingenuous when you have people try to blame the fans for what happened with Ahmed Best, when basically the fans were just like, we really don't have a problem with him personally. If we don't like the character, it's like, you can't like everything about Star Wars. Just happening. Right. I know it happens, but it was very, matter of fact. And it seemed like every time I turned around and read something, it's just like, this particular character is like a caricature of Caribbean people. I'm like, okay, I'm of Caribbean descent. I really did not see any problem with that going on. And I'm just like, why is the press trying to cause an issue when this is a big deal to be in Star Wars? Oh God, why am I blanking on him? Oh my gosh, Mace Windu's actor. I'm having a blank.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. When he told George Lucas, "Shoot, I'll be a potted plant. I just want to be in a star, in a Star Wars movie." So, yeah, sometimes the press cannot be so good at things.
That's true. In fact, back then, if you guys remember, because I was when the prequels came out, I was in college. Basically, I was right before college. I was just starting out going to college, and they literally called the Phantom Menace. Somebody labeled it the racial menace. Like, so even using politics to kind of like critique art was even starting to get like to be a big deal back then, and they were complaining about the different accents that were used for the different alien species, and all of us Star Wars fans were like, what are you talking about? Now, if you go out into the Star Wars fandom, all they want to do is make it about politics. Not us, but others. And the whole thing is a bummer. Like, just like the art or dislike the art, just I don't know.
Well, and that's the cool thing about Star Wars is like, the Jedi are very much modeled after like Japanese samurai, and you have like even right, and even like Amidala, Queen Amidala with the kind of like the very geisha
kabuki makeup,
and I like that. I like how he drew inspiration from different cultures, and it was done in a I thought it was done in a respectful way. I mean, I didn't see any issues with that. I thought it was pretty dope, actually.
It was really
I mean,
artistic because I'm sorry, Jay, not to
no,
cut
go
you
for it.
off, but I remember seeing and reading various interviews with George Lucas when people would say, "How do you come up with these alien races and languages and stuff like that?" And they're just like, we find out from these places, around the world, and kind of listen to their language and kind of riff off of, off of that and some of their cultures, and then we update it and we put it into Star Wars so that when we see it in Star Wars, all we know is that's the so-and-so race. That's the so-and-so race. This is what they do. And there was nothing that hinted to any racial bias or disrespect or anything like that. It just looked and sounded absolutely freaking cool. And I thought it was cool how he would, I forget this one African tribe's language, which I don't think it was like spoken or something like that, but he actually used that in the film. So what a way to preserve a culture by putting them in such a cultural icon, like Star Wars.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, I mean, and that goes back to some of the beginning of the genre, because J.R.R. Tolkien, he utilized the different entities as these are parts of the world, and this is kind of what's going on with World War II, and this is my lens that I'm viewing it in. So like it's part of us accepting fantasy for what it is seeing ourselves and those around us in the world, right? Building the world around it.
Right.
So I like it too. I think it's cool, but I don't know why it's been a contention. I think we can make two mistakes, right? Like we can make the mistake of the artists can put political propaganda or any kind of propaganda into the works, but also we can then interpret the works only through a political sense. And both of those things are like, let's do less of both of those things, right? Like, let's just have good stories and talk about good stories.
Put
That
the
sounds good to me.
stories out there and let the audience make their decision. And that's what art is supposed to be about. You take from it what you take from it, Jay. You take from it what you take from it, Orange Grove. I take from it what I take from it. Hey. And it's not about predisposing you that you should look at it through this lens. It's just, this is my art. If you got what I was going for, okay. If you didn't, that's okay. That's okay too. But they're able to trust their audience. And they need to go back to being able to trust the fans to make up their own minds.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to show, not tell, and that's the thing. They beat you over the head, right? With the messaging. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just tell the story. And then if you have like a moral of the story, that's fine. But you have to show it through great storytelling. You don't beat people over the head with it, like so overtly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so a couple things that I wanted to talk about in relation to what you guys said. One, I have to believe that Grogu's midichlorian count, as you said, OG, is off the charts. It might be so high that he should have been the chosen one. Let's be honest. Like, he's getting extra protection.
Ooh.
He's like if you take his journey so far, everybody knows that he's special. The Jedi are offering him extra protection. The Empire knows about him, and they want to sample his whatever blood, bone marrow. Yeah, clone him, whatever. Like, there's something going on with Grogu that is extra special beyond what we've seen. Maybe in some. I mean, we've seen it maybe in Luke before, or maybe in Rey before. But I mean, this is a special character for sure. So I think that's why they're offering him extra protection. If that's not what they're doing, then I'm going to be a little bit bummed out, because it doesn't make sense if they kind of separate that out. You know what I mean?
That's a great point.
They need to show that. That is a great point, Jay. They need to answer the question or give us some more exposition into the question.
Right.
Why was he so sought after in the first place? And what makes him so special?
Well, and they have to learn from the sequel trilogy on this. They did the same kind of games with Rey, right?
Yeah.
Who is she? And they didn't even know, I don't think, until the very end.
No, they didn't.
They didn't know.
Yeah, and I hope that's not the case with Grogu. I hope that Favreau and Filoni have an end game with him. They know where he is going to end up, and they're working towards that goal. Please don't make the same mistake you made with Rey, and you're just kind of doing it on the fly. I am a little worried too about that, because as much as I love Favreau and Filoni, I think it was Favreau who recently said that there's no end in sight with this show. They're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like it's an open-ended thing. Like they're not really planning it, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're going to kind of go season by season. And that worries me a little bit when it comes to Grogu, especially because they're setting it up. You're absolutely right with that, Jay.
Yeah, and if they ever call him Grogu Skywalker, we all riot.
Oh,
we all
God,
riot. We just go. We hit the streets. This is over. The other thing I wanted to say too was, I think so. John Campea, shout out to John Campea. He had a really, really funny theory. He thinks I don't agree. I'm going to tell you what I think because I'm more in alignment with what Lorena was saying. But he thinks that the Naboo starship picking up Grogu is going to introduce us to Jar Jar Binks. And I'm like, what? Man. So then Ahmed Best is going to play 2 roles. That would be so bizarre. But he was saying, we know that Jar Jar is a senator. We know he's a senator from Naboo.
Yeah.
And that's a Naboo starship. So is he going to go back to that planet and we're going to see him again?
Maybe. That's maybe that's interesting. And then you set it up, right? Like you get the hype train going with showing Ahmed Best, and then you see him interacting with his other character Jar Jar. I could see how they would think that might kind of be like a big like moment, right? Where people are like, that's interesting.
It's wild though. I don't know. But I think actually, to your point, Lorena, I think that we know that Bail Organa is basically the start of the rebellion, right? Like he's the guy that starts everything, and he was already associated with Naboo from the beginning because he was working with Amidala. Right. So even though I don't know if he's going to Alderaan, which I didn't think of. That's a great pickup. They could be taking him to Alderaan, but either way, I think that's where the connective tissue is going to come back in.
You know what? I'm sorry. I made a serious canon error, and my friends are probably like, "We're gonna pull your nerd card." Alderaan blew up in A New Hope, of course, so there is no Alderaan.
That's right. But at this point in time, well, because of the Jedi Temple, when the Jedi Temple was around, there was though. Right. You know what I mean? Because that would have been the prequel.
That's right. That was.
Okay. Revenge of the Sith.
You're good. No, we're not pulling any cards. We're not pulling any cards. You're right on.
Okay. I'm like, I'm trying to calculate.
I know. I actually have that same problem every single time we do an episode.
Okay. Because it's just like, oh my God, I don't want to make one of those errors.
Well, like just so you know, just
Starship Enterprise on a Star Wars shirt. I'm trying to
Yeah, exactly. But just so you know, last week I actually asked Dre about that. I'm like, Dre, where are we in the context of this? Because I'm getting so mixed up about. But this is a really good segue because it's almost like we planned this because now we've got solid connections to the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy, and the original trilogy sprinkled all throughout The Mandalorian. So my question for you guys, and I'll start with you, Lorena. Is it safe to say that The Mandalorian is sort of the glue that binds all of these trilogies together? Why or why not, in your opinion?
I would agree, and it's necessary to do that by necessity. And then here's why. You're talking about The Mandalorian. The first Mandalorian that we're aware of that we've ever seen, if you're watching the films, is Boba Fett. Boba Fett introduced in the original trilogy, first in The Empire Strikes Back, and as a Sarlacc snack in Return of the Jedi. As for the prequel trilogy, and I can't believe because it's been so darn long since I've actually seen that. With the prequel trilogy, just the fact that episodes 4 through 6 are based on 1 through 3. So that's kind of like the original trilogy is more like the middle tier. So in other words, you have got to pull from the prequel trilogy through the original trilogy. The sequel trilogy, because that's what Disney has been building anyway, it's going to be necessary for The Mandalorian to tie into that because, well, one, those films are out there. If, as a Star Wars fan, if I watch the movies, I did not watch Rise of Palpatine because just no, not after Last Jedi. Absolutely no. There needs to be that tie-in. So if I watch, The Mandalorian, and I say I happen to see The Force Awakens, I need to see some kind of link through that, especially since it's a Disney production, not a Fox production, like the prequel and the original trilogy. So it's going to have to be linked to those three, again, by necessity, in order to tell where the Mandalorian came from and where things are going to go in that particular show. So yeah, they are all linked. I wish they weren't linked to the sequel trilogy. I really would not, but yeah, they're gonna. That's what they're doing, and they really do for that show. It's not like Obi-Wan. That should specifically just be original trilogy and prequel trilogy. Meanwhile, Book of Boba Fett, it's linked to all three too.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. What about you, OG? What do you think?
It's interesting. Yeah, no, they're absolutely doing that. They're absolutely connecting all three of these eras. And I agree with Lorena. I mean, Mando technically takes place in that OT era, which is right in the middle between the prequels and the sequels. So it makes sense that they're going to kind of dip from both. Okay, so from a story standpoint, it absolutely makes sense, and they're doing the right thing. I also think, and I think I said this on last week's show as well. I think what Disney is going to try to do. Some people think they're going to retcon the sequels. I actually think what they're going to do with the sequels is sort of kind of do what Lucas did with the prequels. When those movies came out, and he kind of got a lot of heat from fans or what have you, he introduced the Clone Wars series, and that kind of put meat on the bones of that whole era, right? And it kind of made the prequels, it did make the prequels even better with what he did with the Clone Wars. I think Disney's hoping to kind of do that with the sequels. So they're sort of putting in this ancillary material and injecting it in, and hopefully it fleshes out the sequel era better. Now, there's a huge caveat to that. You have to execute it well. Like, the Clone Wars series was executed very well, so it worked. If they don't execute it very well, where they're filling in these blanks for the sequels and people aren't really feeling it, then you're still, up shit's creek with no paddle, right? The execution is like pretty much everything. So, but I do see why they're doing it. I think it's the right move. In that regard, and that's why I'm kind of like, even though I think the sequel trilogy was very much a mess, they didn't plan it out, they didn't map it out, nothing. I am supportive though of more sequel era stuff, just because I feel like I see it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make the sequel trilogy better, right? Like, it has a lot of flaws, a lot of stuff in there. Okay, we can take this ancillary material and sort of, kind of connect it and make that whole trilogy much, much better. And I'm open for that. I really am. I think it needs that, to be honest.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that. One of the reasons that I got into The Mandalorian was to kind of wipe the taste out of my mouth of the sequel trilogy. It's like, oh, okay, this is something that I can latch onto and enjoy, to kind of forget what I saw in the sequel trilogy. But even if they do link to things, it's kind of like ancillary. I'm looking at something that I enjoy looking at, because I will say, for all of its flaws, I've enjoyed The Mandalorian way more than I have any of the sequel trilogy films. And Jon Favreau has a lot to do with that. And ancillary tangent point, Dave Filoni has been executive producer at Lucasfilm for over the past year. So I think that this is the first season of The Mandalorian that's been mostly under his producership. I do not believe that Disney is going to retcon the sequel trilogy. From a practical point of view, they got a lot of sequel trilogy merch out there. and three movies. So they're not going to retcon it. They do not have the opportunity the way that Ghostbusters Afterlife did. They only had one movie to retcon, and that was Ghostbusters 2016.
Yes.
That's one movie where it was like a blip. Yeah, we can forget about that. And everyone wants to forget about that movie.
Well, and another thing too, in theory, I wouldn't mind if they retcon, but one thing that really would make me go like, oh man, I hope they don't, is that unfortunately, we don't have Carrie Fisher with us anymore. So if you were to retcon it, what do you do about that? I don't want no AI Carrie Fisher.
No, I don't want that. And that's one of the things that broke the hearts of a lot of fans. It's like you had one shot to get the band back together.
Yeah,
that was pretty much all we wanted, and that didn't happen. And right now, Lucasfilm is going through so many writers for supposed Star Wars movies, canceled, started back up again. There's no direction. So I don't think they couldn't even get the sequel trilogy right. So it's just kind of like, just let it sit out there. And like you were saying, OG, and I agree, just work on the Disney Plus shows. I don't particularly care for Andor because it's just not my thing. I'm sorry, I fell asleep and nah. However, in isolation, the quality is definitely very good. It's just not something that's to my taste. So I totally see where you're going with that Orange Grove 55. So they just concentrate on those and kind of ignore the sequel trilogy. Is like, yeah, we know it's there, but don't pay attention to our shows. Don't pay attention to our movies.
Yeah. I have a slightly different take on it being the glue. And by the way, we are going to get to the don't worry, chat. We got to talk Darth Jar Jar theory. We got to talk a couple of other things in there. We will get to those. But I actually was hoping that the Mandalorian, the feeling I had with the Mandalorian is that it was going to be a side story about what other things were going on in the galaxy, as opposed to the important things that mattered in the Skywalker saga, right? And so I kind of thought that was cool because it gave a reason to give us like a loner Western kind of pursuit. And now we don't really have that anymore, because like, if you were all of a sudden to be like, oh, by the way, Grogu, I'm going to still go off and be a loner, you'd be like, well, he just abandoned the galaxy. Like, it'd be weird. So that to me is not like a swing and a miss, because I think that what you both said is true. This is the way for them to bring people back into the fold who got, just like you, Lorena, like you described exactly what I think this show is meant to do. Bring you back into the fold, even though the sequel trilogy was a disaster, right? And I think that's true. It is what this show is trying to accomplish. I just kind of wish it was something that we could see all the other worlds, the Outer Rim worlds. I thought it was maybe going to be a little bit more episodic, and that we were going to go from one planet to the next planet, solving problems, getting into trouble, having to solve that. It's not that at all. It's something different. I still like it. Don't get me wrong. I still like it. It's just that I thought it was going to be something different, and I would still love to see that somewhere in the Star Wars universe. Right. So, all right, we got one more question to tackle here.
And real quick, I just want to say too, I think that could have worked. I think that would have been really dope. I think Lucasfilm is in the predicament now where like Mando is literally holding the studio up at this point.
Yeah, no joke.
So it's like, what do you do? Like, that's the only way they have to do this kind of now, right?
Yeah. And you have two guys at the helm of this show who are insanely good at it. You guys already described Filoni being good at it, but Favreau comes from a place of saying, like, I grew up with the OT. I appreciate the PT. I've seen the ST, and we'll get into all of those things, right? So the two together make a pretty perfect unit to be the glue. If you're going to have anybody do it, these are the guys you would want to do it, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's not going to be a big problem, but it gives me a little bit of pause. So I'm like, oh, I thought, like, for example, I thought we were going to go see like Nar Shaddaa, which is a planet we haven't really seen except in the games. I thought we were going to go see some other planets that we haven't really seen, but no, we're kind of just seeing the same. It's still the galaxy story, and that's fine. But I thought we were going to get to see some other stuff. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
I'm a little bit
last
of a slightly I'm sorry, just one more thing.
No, go for it.
I'm in a bit of like a slightly different mindset when it comes to Favreau and Filoni.
Interesting.
Filoni, I'm not a fan of.
Really?
Is
it the cowboy hat?
Oh no. Doesn't have to do with the cowboy hat. I did not like the Clone War. Excuse me. I know I didn't. I couldn't stand Rebels. I fell asleep on the Clone War series. Just like, no, I cannot. I can't get through that. It didn't interest me really at all. And Filoni's style, it's not. I trust Favreau definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. When you hear him talk about Star Wars and you hear the love in his voice about it and what he's done, especially that first season of The Mandalorian was tight from beginning to end.
Right.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And Favreau had his hands all in that and all over that. Around 2, you had Filoni kind of come in there, and it was like a mixed up kind of jumbled mess, whether it's that, Filoni is Favreau is focused on other things, maybe not in The Mandalorian as much as he used to. And to me, that kind of shows. So I know for me, I would be just much happier if just Favreau took over the whole entire thing. Let Filoni work with Ahsoka, because he loves Ahsoka to death. That's his waifu. He loves Ahsoka. Book of Boba Fett was down. That was friggin' abysmal, and that was a Filoni thing. I just didn't like that. Didn't like that one at all. Kenobi, they should have left that alone or just made it into a 2-hour movie, 2-hour movie for Disney Plus. So I can see where you guys are coming, but for me, it's just like, I would feel much better if it was just Favreau up here and you kind of had Filoni kind of like on the side, still contributing, but not at the helm, so to speak.
Yeah, you bring up some good points though with Filoni though, Lorena. Like, and I kind of echo some of your sentiments here with him, because like there's certain things about like his style or what he incorporates into Star Wars that a lot of fans say, oh, Filoni gets Star Wars, right? And what he does, it feels like Star Wars. Some of it does, but some of it feels very not Star Wars. Like when I watch some of the animated shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you see Sabine, and then you see like the Bad Batch, and they have all the spray painted like helmets and like, I don't know, for some reason that's like, that doesn't really feel like Star Wars to me, right? It just feels out of like, this is like the OT, the original trilogy, you never saw stuff like that out in the galaxy before, right? And then you insert that into that era with the animated shows. I just feel it feels out of place. It doesn't feel very Star Wars to me. And there's things that he's done that like that, like, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't really feel like Star Wars, or like the singing droid in Rebels. I don't know if you remember that episode with the singing droid.
Did I say, if I did, I wiped it from my
very weird stuff. So I see where you're coming from, Lorena. Filoni has choice. He's made some choices that I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't have the energy. And then sometimes he hits a home run, like, wow, that's the energy, right? So, but he definitely has some things in there he doesn't have a flawless resume. That's all I'm saying. Definitely not.
And I don't know the interdynamics of how they work together well enough to say, because when we were talking when Bryant was on the show, and by the way, Captain John D is in the chat, just gave us a super chat.
Oh,
you're the best, Captain John D.
Dude.
Let's go ahead. We got to give Captain John D a proper intro. Though.
Oh, you got to give him the intro. You got to give him the intro.
Here we go. Captain John D's got his own graphic and everything,
That's VIP treatment right there.
But
it's the best. It's the best graphic that I think you even have. Like he's got it. It's amazing.
It's awesome. You want to take really the honors, cool, Jay, and go ahead and
Yeah, so Captain John D says Mando started out as the Star Wars version of, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, Kwai Chang Caine, Kung Fu.
Yeah.
The spirit of the series lies in that format. Turning Mando into connection point of future Star Wars content has killed the show, in my opinion. So he kind of agrees with me. He was looking at it as going down this other path. It's not going down that path. It's going down the path of saying, let's make it connective tissue. Let's make it glue. And that does mean that you've got to make choices that I would have not otherwise made for this show. And that's the part that I get nervous about. That is really the part that I get nervous about. So Captain John D, you and I are on the same page with that. Same page. Yeah, so just going back to Favreau and Filoni really quick. I'm not sure, because we had Bryant Dillon on the show a couple weeks ago, and Bryant was like, I think some of what you guys are complaining about, Filoni, is actually Favreau. I still don't quite buy that argument fully. I totally respect Bryant. Bryant's awesome. But I feel like when I've seen Filoni talk about Star Wars, when I've seen him implement Star Wars, he sort of has this legacy as being the guy who George Lucas trusted, right? And then we start to hear, but sometimes I'm like, wait a minute, guys. George Lucas also got real confused about what he was actually saying about the Force. And so when he transferred that knowledge back to Filoni, it's still confusing today. Like, in other words, George Lucas is a guy who showed up and said, there's the evil empire and the dark side is bad. And then later on in life went, well, people are more gray and there's like a little bit of dark and light in all of us and yin and yang. And like, let's throw it like, so I don't want to say that anymore. And then Filoni's left with this very confusing thing where he's like, wait a minute, which one is good? Is it, were we supposed to have both? Rian Johnson went the Filoni route, by the way, in The Last Jedi by saying like, there's dark and light in all of us. That is not, if you go back to the original trilogy, that is not at all what George was communicating. No. So I think that sometimes when we say things about Filoni, I do think he is like this very much what the Lucasfilm story group is. He's a great librarian. I trust Favreau, though, to be like, yeah, but some of those things don't make sense in the context of stories, librarians. Like, you can be a guy who catalogs things, but I'm the guy who tells and shapes the stories. And that's kind of, I feel how they kind of work together. It's just my personal take. Haven't seen them work together that way. So Lorena, I actually am a little bit on your side. I'm always a little bit more nervous about Filoni. I'm more confident in Favreau, and for those reasons. So
absolutely.
All right, should we move on to our last question before we tackle some of the comments from the chat too?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So this is probably one of the deeper questions that I asked on this one. We learned a new part of the Mandalorian creed this week, and it's one that I think might make 90% of YouTubers like us ineligible for Mandalorian membership, at least in this covert. Yeah. And it is, one does not speak unless one knows. And I just gave you my opinion about Filoni, and I have known nothing about the guy besides what I see in the press. So what significance does that saying have, not only for Star Wars, but for our own real world experience too? Lorena, you want to tackle this one first?
I kind of saw that or read into that as, if you're not sure, don't speak on it.
Right.
There are going to be times where someone does not have all the information. You can have imperfect information and still make an educated decision. But I think it's the thing of not being so hasty to speak unless you're 100% sure. Like, basically, don't call somebody a liar unless you know for sure. Hello, Professor X. Thank you so much for video bombing my stream. Yes, I know I'm late with your treat. That's his spot. I've had to make him a spot over there.
I'm gonna have to go back and make a Professor X graphic now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Little cat graphic.
Spot, boom, right in front of my Star Wars art, right?
He's awesome.
Right there. But yeah, that's kind of how I took that. It's like, unless you're 100% sure, 99% sure, or confident in what you were going to say, then basically don't speak on it. Don't call someone a liar unless you have irrefutable proof. You know, if probably what the youngling was going to say is, oh, he cheated or did something, we're just like, did he? Are you sure? You know, are you sure about that? or is it sour? Is it sour grapes? But I think it's interesting, Jay, you were saying, well, that applies to like 90% of YouTubers. And in a way, it kind of should. Kind of should. I mean, again, you're going to make inferences sometimes based on imperfect information, and you're kind of putting your opinion out there. And I would say opinion as opposed to fact. Like I can say so and so pretty much just sucks, but I haven't seen that movie, so I can't tell you. I just don't like it. And to being very transparent about it, as opposed to, hey, I saw the film, I saw it. I can actually, I can speak on it. But I find that phrase actually very poignant. It's choose your words carefully. And when I think about it, it's just like, Boba Fett didn't say a whole lot unless you threatened his money for his prize, and he told Vader he's worth a lot to me. Boba Fett didn't have a whole lot of lines. He was just basically, you saw by his posture and his stance. That's why it was kind of weird in Book of Boba Fett. We're like, oh my God, he's talking too freaking much. way too much that I'm comfortable with. I know, long ass answer, but I did like that line indeed, and liked how it was used to basically instruct the familings and remind the older ones of this particular piece of protocol.
Yeah. What about you, OG?
Okay, so it was interesting when Ragnar says, "Oh, this kid, he's got no helmet. How's he gonna fight?" He's kind of talking smack about little Grogu. And then when Din says, one does not speak unless one knows, it kind of reminded me a lot actually of Yoda. Do not judge me by my size. Right? Where it's, right. And it was like very much like this whole like you think but you don't know kind of mentality, and it's very. I liked it. It had parallels to like kind of like Jedi teachings and what have you. So I thought that was very, very interesting. I thought that it was a very Star Warsy moment. In terms of like the real world application. Yeah, I mean, everyone kind of falls victim to this. I mean, I know I have many times on Twitter, like sometimes you get out there like, oh, I'm gonna have an opinion, right? And it's just like maybe you speak before you really know, and it's like we've all been there. And I don't know, it's a lesson for I think everybody really, especially in the social media age where it's right, like maybe it's good to just take a few minutes before you hit that send button, right? To kind of make sure right? Like kind of like
So get punked by a obvious parody account, and it was so good that you completely missed it.
So it's interesting, but I thought it was fantastic. That was very much like the most Star Warsy thing, like very much like
Agreed.
It's Star Wars. That's one of the things I love about it so much is these little life lessons they kind of sprinkle into it. They've always have done that.
Yeah.
And this episode to have that in there, it brought it home for me. That's very Star Wars. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with both of you. I loved it. I feel like in a world where opinions are cheap and perspectives are plentiful, we could learn something from this statement, just as you both have already said, right? Like,
right.
This statement is used to do something pretty cool in the covert. It's used to instill humility inside the covert, to be like, you know what? If you don't know, you should just shut up, right? Like this is what this is meant to be, and it's used as humility. It's the kid thinks to himself, I'm gonna shoot Grogu with 3 darts, and it's gonna be over. Like, this is ridiculous. But yet he needs humility. He needs to be shown, like, you know what? You don't really speak until you know. And I think that there's even now. This is complete speculation. Maybe this is me breaking the Creed rule already, but you'll notice that Paz Vizsla says it to the armorer when they're watching Grogu, and to me that was almost an indication of like, is there a prophecy about Grogu? Is there like a reason why this covert is actually saying like, we'll train up Grogu? Because and he was kind of, the way he said it was almost kind of like, one does not speak unless one knows. Like, maybe we shouldn't get too far ahead of ourselves with thinking that this little Grogu is going to be our savior. But I just felt like there was something in that moment that I was like, it's interesting for him to say that to the armorer in the context of watching Grogu train with them. So there's a lot of interesting pieces about this, but I think it really is, I think that something that Favreau and Filoni are doing very subtly, and we've talked about this in some of the other episodes too, is that I think Favreau and Filoni are a little bit kind of trying to do what Lucas was doing in terms of weaving myth, but like myth that has some human truths to it into their work, like you said, OG. And that's one of them. It's like the people watching this show do get ahead of themselves. They do go after people. They go after the wrong people. I mean, we saw it with by the way, I'm also not a fan of the Rose Tico character and how the Rose Tico character was used, but that has nothing to do with Kelly Marie Tran. She didn't make those choices. She showed up to do a job, right? So
you got that check. That's it.
Yeah. So exactly. And so I feel like this is a sort of a little bit of a message to Star Wars fans, right? Like it's a little bit of a message from Favreau and Filoni of like, look, guys, take it easy sometimes. Sometimes you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay with that. So long as it doesn't get preachy and so long as it's communicating human truths that are good advice for the real world, I think we're good to go, right? As soon as it gets preachy and it gets over the top, that's when I go, you know what? This is propaganda. I'm out. but this I think resonates. This resonates with me. It resonates with us. I think it's a good one. So okay. So anything else we should talk about as it relates to episode 4, or should we dive into some of these comments that we've gotten along the way?
Anything on your mind, Lorena?
Comments? No, I pretty much said what I wanted to say, and bouncing off of you guys and hearing, your opinions. Very good discussion.
Yeah. And thanks for joining us for it too. So here's the first one. Low spec Linux laptop says, I liked the Order 66 scene, but they had an escape plan, so the Jedi knew that this attack was going to happen. What do you guys think about that? Did the Jedi know this attack was coming? Or is this just kind of like them trying to figure it out as they go?
Trying to figure it out as they go, because they had no idea that this was coming. No one saw this coming. Who was going to see that one of the Jedi Masters was basically going to go around, murking younglings? No one saw that.
Right.
No one saw that. And that was part of the emotional devastation. The deepest cut that anyone can do to you is someone who you think that you can trust, and it turns out that that you cannot. So to me, that's the issue that I have with going back to all these people surviving Order 66. That just didn't go right. I think that's a Pandora's box that they opened that they shouldn't have, and now they can't really do anything about it.
And they keep going back to that box
they do.
over and over and over again, right?
Yeah. I saw it in Kenobi and was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I 100% agree with you, Lorena, and I think we need a T-shirt that says "Merc Younglings." just have a Anakin shadow in the background.
Yeah.
BJ Vincent says, I think Grogu needs to have a developmental lead as well. Yes, he is cute, but in terms of story, it's getting really dull. What do you guys think about that comment?
It's interesting. We touched upon this a little earlier on in the show. One of the things I actually liked about this episode, and actually throughout the season, I do feel like they're seed planting. Like they're definitely giving Grogu more responsibilities. He's not. I think I would kind of disagree. I would disagree with BJ on this a little bit, or I feel like they are doing that. They are making him kind of evolve. Oh, well, sorry about that. Kind of evolve into something more than just the little baby that needs protecting, right? But you can't jump into that in a way that feels jarring or too fast too. Like it has to feel like a very gradual, organic thing. You don't want to have him go from oh, he's this helpless little cute little baby to like just just thrashing at everybody and on his own. You have to have that transition, and it can't feel too rushed. And I think they're actually handling that pretty well. In my opinion, with Grogu, I think they're handling it really well, but we'll see. What do you guys think?
I think, Lorena, you go ahead. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. It's like the cuteness. Okay. It's like it was set up in season 1. It was cute to see that. Cute to see him in season 2. I thought he was going to go away with Luke. And when he came back, he'd look like basically like a miniature, we'll say like an adolescent type of, Yoda. Grown up. We'd actually hear him talk, recount what he's learned, see the things that he fails at. But it is getting tired. And if I knew it was getting tiring, but when I saw the scene with Grogu jumping over Youngling and then jumping back over him again, and then I see the videos on Twitter where they basically put that scene to the music from the Super Mario games and everything. It's just, it's really worn thin. So they really need to make him evolve. He needs to either talk or by some indication, see what he's doing. Because if we're saying like 3 years and like human years, he should be talking, saying no, getting away with nonsense. There should be some kind of progression that we'll see. Because cute merchandise is cool, but you need to give us something to keep coming back for. Eventually, cute just wears off.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Lorena. And boy, I do not envy Favreau and Filoni for having to make those decisions, because he's such a beloved little character now. And once you start to make him talk, or you give him sort of like he gets older, it gets risky now, because now you're changing this thing that everyone loves. Like, oh, so what if he goes full like just evil, right? Like you're gonna have fans that are like, oh god, that's terrible, right? or like it's like, oh man, these decisions about how he's gonna evolve, I would not want that on my like, I wouldn't want that kind of responsibility, right? Like the responsibility of evolving this character and the potential backlash for the direction it goes in. But they have to do it though. That's the thing. They can't avoid it. Oh man, it's like walking on eggshells.
I want to say, if they had the perfect out to put that on the shelf, and that was let Grogu stay with Luke. Instead of sending him in an Uber with R2D2 back to Tatooine. Man, did you really?
And did you guys see it? Like at the end of this episode, when the armorer gives him that little,
oh yeah,
that was like
almost bigger than him.
Yeah, how's he gonna walk around or do anything with this thing? It's like massive. Poor kid.
Plus, he already has the chainmail, right? The Beskar chainmail.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's got the chainmail, and now this big heavy thing. He's probably going to be face planting every like couple of inches when he's walking.
Yeah,
and it's going to take him forever to grow into that thing, because that species. I mean, he's 50 years old. It's going to take him another 50 years to fit it.
That's where I was going to go with this. So I don't mind how he's developed on screen and the process of that. But this kid's been babbling for 50 years, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it gets weird when you see him in the flashbacks, because you're like, oh, he was still a kid. Like, they just babbled around. Now, I'm assuming, so this is what's interesting, right? I'm assuming he trained at the Jedi Temple because he was a youngling. He trained with Luke. I mean, this kid should be seemingly a little further ahead than he is right now. But I don't mind his development in the show. It's everything that came before, everything they keep showing us, everything they keep adding. I'm like, oh, that makes it weirder. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of normal, and then made it weirder. Well, this is just from Low Spec Linux. This is just my advice as well. Coder has some of the best story writing in all of Star Wars, and everybody should go out and play it. And by the way, you can get it if you have I don't know about Android, but on iOS you can get and play it on your phone. They have the whole game on just to play on your phone,
awesome.
Or an even better iPad, which is phenomenal. So go out and get that.
Oh, nice.
OC
Awesome.
Giggin says, I think they're gonna have Reva be the one that saved Grogu.
I will riot.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that character again. No. That's too much.
And
I'm confused.
it seemed like there was a way to show that if they were gonna do that. That's what I felt like. They could have showed it in this episode if they were gonna do that, but since they didn't show it,
I think it's Ahmed Best's character that saved him, right? That's why I'm a little confused by the comment.
Yeah, he did. He got him out of there. He did a Terminator, basically. come with me if you want to live, and that's pretty much what happened. He got him out there, got him, to the to his Naboo contacts. Of course, they said, "Here, ship's fueled. Go and take it." Okay. Put him in there and took off. So he pretty much got him out of there.
Yeah. I don't think there's a I agree with you guys. I don't think there's a subplot there. DWMX says, wasn't Jar Jar a Sith Lord? Now, I'm assuming most of us know what this theory was, that Jar Jar became a Sith Lord, and the whole time he was just manipulating things alongside Palpatine.
Right.
Now, what do you guys think about that theory? What's your take on that theory?
I hadn't heard it, but I freaking like it, actually. That would explain a lot.
It's interesting. Well, it's an interesting idea because he kind of played like the idiot, right? And he really wasn't. He's a very manipulative, kind of almost like this Palpatine-esque kind of figure.
Yes, cool. Remember when Palpatine was like, my appearance is disfigured because I was attacked? And we're just like, that's such a freaking act. And they're all buying it.
Right? It would be kind of a brilliant move, but that was just a fan theory from what I understand, right? Was that in any kind of like
no, it was just a fan theory. It was maybe one of the best fan theories of all time, because the way that theory was written was so complete with so much evidence that it really was a compelling theory. But I'm just here to say it's total bullshit. They're not going to bring Jar Jar in as a Sith Lord. That's not going to happen. I love the theory. We should do that, but it's not happening. It's not happening. OC Giggin says, if they don't retcon the sequels, at least they can make them an alternate timeline. And we talked about this the other day with Dre, because Dre was hoping that would happen as well. What do you guys think about having an alternate timeline here?
I don't quote me on this. I'm just shaking my magic 8 ball. But I think that the Ahsoka series is going to do that.
Interesting. Through like the world between worlds kind of situation, maybe, or
yes, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I wasn't too familiar with the Ahsoka character, but when people were telling me about the world between worlds and all of that, I said, okay, then you can kind of get into this whole multiverse thing. So if they're going to do an alternate timeline, it's probably going to be through Ahsoka. Now, I'm looking forward to the Ahsoka series because it's Rosario Dawson. That is my pure interest in that show, but I really do think that they're going to make some moves with that particular show, probably more so than the Mandalorian, and that one is Filoni's baby. So
yes, it is.
Keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
The one way I thought that they could bring in the world between worlds was, we talked about this in the other show, but it was in the sequence in The Last Jedi when Rey is doing the snapping and it goes and all those characters. I feel like they just need to have one of those versions of Rey exit and go a different direction than we saw her actually go out in The Last Jedi. And then there's your transition right there. That's a different Elseworlds, right? Like, so we'll see. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. Here's the problem here's the problem that Disney faces and the problem that we face as fans. Disney, like you guys already said, it would be almost impossible to completely retcon the sequel trilogy. I mean, Batuu is based off the sequel trilogy. They have to change 2 lands in addition to changing everything else they got to do, right? So I think that when I say Batuu, I just mean the theme park lands in Galaxy's Edge. So they would have to do so much work with that to retcon it. I think maybe we can see a world between worlds kind of thing, but I don't think it's going to ever be fully retconned. it's just too much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe alternate timeline where they dip in and out of that or something.
Mhm. Yeah.
But no, not a full on retcon. Like this doesn't matter anymore. They're never doing that.
There's too much out there.
Yeah, way too much. Way too much. And we got Mr. Captain John D. It was very heartwarming to see Ahmed best part of the episode. Did y'all get the feels? Yeah, it was really awesome. It was really awesome. It was good to see him.
I can't remember
afterwards. I found out afterwards. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry about it, because I had the same experience. I was like, I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd been spoiled on it because earlier in the day I'd been on Twitter and someone was saying like, "Oh, I can't believe Ahmed Best is back," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I watched the episode and didn't recognize him, which was stupid of me. But now, granted, I was watching it on a phone that was about this big, so I was trying to because I'd already been spoiled. I'm like, I don't want to be spoiled anymore.
Right.
But yeah, I missed it too. And then when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, that's amazing!" Like that, it does, Captain John D. Hit me in the feels. I think anytime you can do that, that's great.
I felt happy for him. I'm like, really? That's him? It's pretty cool. He put him there.
Yeah.
And he seems like the nicest dude. Like he seems, all too much in Hollywood and stuff. Like some of these actors and actresses, they seem so phony and fake. Ahmed Best seems like a genuinely good, nice dude. Like I would love to just hang with that guy. He seems like a really nice guy, which is rare nowadays, like I said, in Hollywood. So
True.
So
very true. Matthew Muir says, "What's up, Matthew? Always good to see you. I really believe Star Wars TV shows could be used to make the sequels better, like the Clone Wars did for the prequels, which we talked about a little bit. So we do think that most of us think that they're basically using the Mandalorian as the glue that'll hold all of this together. So just like the Force, it's binding everything together.
Yes. Yeah, that's the direction they're going at. I think they're going in with this whole thing, and they're giving that connective tissue. They're trying to kind of make the sequels better. And again, it's a good idea, but it all comes down to the execution. And if
all about that,
they don't stick that landing,
that's right.
It's going to be problems.
Yeah.
It's going to be problems.
That's right. BJ Vincent is back to say it seems Bo-Katan is definitely enjoying being around her fellow kind, the other Mandalorians again. What does that implication have? What do you think, Lorena?
Well, should I drop now about some folks out there who are like Din Djarin and Bo-Katan shippers, or is it
go scorched earth?
Yeah. We'll see where that goes. That will be interesting. There's definitely something going on there. Can't say 100%, but considering how she reacted when she found out Grogu had come back and Mando was still on the planet, that was a very personal reaction. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, so far she seems kind of like, okay, I could learn to like it here. That's kind of how she seems. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how that develops. If they develop it. We've got 4 more episodes left. Chop.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta be done.
She definitely likes. She's definitely taking. I don't know if "likes" is the right word, but she's definitely Bo-Katan definitely taking a what's the word for it? Like she's kind of getting into a rhythm with her like leading this group of Mandalorians. And I'm digging that element of it. She's kind of taking charge and sort of becoming like it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I think she's the cool part. Okay. So let me just say a couple things. I don't think I've said this on a podcast ever, but this covert and their helmet laws, come on, give me a break. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You can't ever take off your helmet ever. Like, even in the scene where they go, oh yeah, well, how do I eat now? And they go, okay, we're all going to go to our separate places to eat. I'm just like, are you serious, man? So I think that is set up to say that there is too much fundamentalism in this particular covert. I think it's still part of Bo-Katan's arc. Bo-Katan is a lost soul. She is a person who has turned away from any sort of faith. faith in her country, faith in her fellow people. She's just a deconstructionist who has reconstructed nothing. And she needs to reconstruct something. And I think that this is giving her that grounding to be able to reconstruct something. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more balanced than what we see in this particular covert. But I think that this is going to teach her how to become a leader for the Mandalorian people and how to incorporate multiple different types of belief systems into an overarching narrative for the planet and the system. So that's kind of my take on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think you're right. I think she's going to kind of unite all these different factions, and we're starting to see the seeds being planted in regards to that whole end game, so to speak.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
They just need to show the reason for her existence. Why is she in this storyline? That question needs to be answered. And if that's left unanswered by the end of this season, it's not gonna bode well. That and where is IG-11's chip at?
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that whole thing was really weird, by the way. Like it was like
weird.
Right? They were so hell bent on no, it has to be IG-11. It has to be IG-11. And then he ultimately just settled for the other droid anyway.
Yeah,
so it's like,
I'm just like, you're trying to revive an assassin droid, kick-ass graphics on that. Because I was like, why is that particular droid such a danger? And then you saw it in action. It's like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, bad idea trying to bring that back to life.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a feeling it was basically like they did episode 1 and then they're like, Taika, come in and record some dialogue. And he's like, do I have a movie or do I not have a movie? I'm not doing this until I got a movie. No, I'm just teasing. I have no clue. But yeah, they've gone some different places that are weird. We only have 4 episodes left. Yeah. One of the things that I think that Disney has been a little bit spotty on with their TV shows, for the most part, they've nailed it. But every once in a while, they kind of end on this weird cliffhanger that doesn't feel like it's like I don't know if you guys watch The Boys on Amazon. I only watched the first season and then half the second season. It's a little intense, and the second season got a little boring for me. But those seasons would just end in the like, not even have a full complete. It was like, that's a cliffhanger to the. So I do not want that to happen. Like you're saying, Lorena, like if we just like stop in the middle, it's like, oh, if you want to see Bo-Katan go off on her other journey to save Mandalore, that's a different show. It's like, oh man, let's not do that. It's got to be this show. It's got to be this show.
Yeah, it's got to be this one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, should we end it here? Should we close it out? Let people get back to their Friday night activities. So everybody in the chat, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
Let me know if you like this format where we're able to kind of go back through the comments after we're able to talk through some things, because I think that worked a lot more smoothly than we've done in the past. So if that works for you guys, let me know in the chat if that works. Definitely check us out. We'll be back next week talking about episode 5. Lorena, tell folks where they can find you. You should definitely go follow. By the way, let me just say this. I love following Lorena on Twitter. She has great takes and she's very encouraging, but when she also has an opinion that's negative, she's not overwhelmingly so. She's not like some people out there on Twitter. You can get pretty crazy with your negative takes. Lorena does not do that. She has fantastic takes, and I highly recommend following her. And thank you for joining us. So where can people find you, and what are you doing on YouTube? What are you doing in all these spaces?
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate being here, hanging out with you guys. You guys, of course, there in the chat. Of course, you can find me on YouTube in addition to Twitter. Various live streams, videos that get uploaded. Actually, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, I will be broadcasting live from Epcot. So we're going to be there in the evening this time around to kind of go and hang out and, do the stuff, stroll and chill. I walk around, show you the park. You guys ask me questions. I look at stuff I have no business looking at. Like I need to stay out of Art of Disney and I can't. I can't stay out of that place. So that is Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Also, also, no, sorry, Saturday. Goodness, it's been a long day. That's Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Also Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, my deep dive review of episode 4 of The Mandalorian season 3 is dropping. I'm doing that with Retro Nerd Girl. So that video is going to premiere tomorrow at 3 p.m. Positive Fandom has the great fortune of being over in London because she's going to be there to go see Star Wars Celebration. So that's why she's not on that, but she should be back with us by the time we do episode 7. Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern is the Welcome to Florida show, but we are taking time to EFAP the Defunct Land Fast Pass video. So maybe we'll get through another 10 minutes. I think it's like an hour and a half, and we've only gotten through maybe 30 minutes of footage.
Wow.
With just some great commentary between myself, Culture Casino, and also Dad Man Walking. We kind of talk about this evolution or whatever of Fast Pass, and I kind of give you some insight into how it's changed, how it's affected people's plans, and also some history on Walt Disney in the state of Florida. So definitely check that out. And of course, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, Theme Park Therapy on my channel. Orange Grove 55 will be there. Dre will be there. Theme Park Casual, Culture Casino, Theme Park Wizard, basically all my crazy theme park geeks. We're all together hanging out and talking about stuff. And in that particular episode, we are going to be talking about what is going on with the Little Mermaid live action reboot. Why is Halle Berry saying some really kind of out there things that basically signal I don't think you saw the animated movie, did you?
Yeah.
We're kind of like, really? Okay. So we're going to be talking about that. And of course, your theme park gripes, your theme park greats, loves, whatever. Just a fun time to hang out and talk theme parks.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Perfect.
OG, where can people find you, and what do you got coming up on this channel?
Perfect. You can find me right here on Orange Grove 55. We do all kinds of fun stuff, a lot of theme park stuff, but we also dive into a lot of film and streaming and TV stuff and the corporate side. Even we're talking about Bob Iger. Hey, we're definitely going to dive into this Victoria Alonso thing. I don't know if you both have heard some breaking news before we went live today, but her attorney made a statement saying that I guess Disney basically Disney wanted her to do something reprehensible and she refused, and she's claiming that the firing is like punishment, or like they're retaliating against her.
Ooh,
so this is getting dirty.
This is getting so juicy.
Dirty. Exactly. So we're gonna dive into that whole corporate drama stuff, I'm sure, in the days to come. But I just want to thank Jay. Phenomenal host.
Yes,
awesome time today talking Mando. Lorena, always a pleasure having you on the channel. And actually, Lorena, I have a very special drop for you because I know you love Runaway Railway.
Nothing can stop us now.
There you go.
I freaking love that. I love that attraction. Oh my gosh.
I do too. I was on I did a trip to California, and so my wife and I went to Disneyland, and we were talking about it. And I'm like, I don't understand why that ride gets hate, because I also love that ride. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. That like 1930s era Disney cartoons. I'm telling you, Steamboat Willie is a classic. It will always be a classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter over here at Jay Sherer. You can also check out my other YouTube channel, How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. Got a couple videos up there. Talking to a literary professor, American lit professor, about whether or not we should ban books. You can go check that video out. That dropped on Wednesday. On Tuesday, we dropped an interview with Drunk 3PO, Jay, Drunk 3PO, and that is talking about his new graphic novel. So if you're interested in storytelling and storytelling topics, go head over to How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. Otherwise, just follow me on Twitter. I post about all the things that I am up to. Thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Lorena. Absolute pleasure to have you join us
so much.
this
Love
week.
being here.
Yeah, thank you, OG. Always good to see you. I got to talk to OG twice this week, and that was really fun. So super cool stuff. Everybody out there, have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy Star Wars or don't, whatever you feel. But let us know in the comments down below what you thought of episode 4. We'll see you guys later.